Welcome back, dear learners. I am now going to introduce you to interest on overdue debtors accounts. What is interest on overdue debtors? Interest on overdue debtors is also considered interest income. This is interest that we receive. When a debtor does not pay his account according to the credit terms, it is the period that we have given to the debtor to pay the account. If they don't pay according to the credit terms, then the debtor is charged interest. When the debtor then pays his or her account, he must pay the original amount and also the interest that we would have charged on the account. It is very important that you get to understand how do we prepare the general journal when we have interest that has been charged. Let us see how we can do it. It says, on the 31st, charged the overdue account of D debtor of 24,000 with interest of 3% per annum for the 3 months. The first thing you need to do is to calculate the interest. So, how do we do that? Make sure you have your pen and your pencil because we are going to calculate some interest. This is how you calculate the interest. You say the amount that is being owed by the debtor, 24,000, multiplied by the interest rate, which is your 3%, 3 over 100, and the period that the debt has been overdue by, which is your 3 over 12, then you get 180. Because this interest that we have charged is going to increase the debtor's account. That means the amount that our debtor is owing is going to increase. So we have to debit this particular debtor. So we debit D debtor. And there is the debit, 180. Once we debit our debtor, it is going to increase as well our debtor's control. So you see, when we come to the debtor's control, I have a plus on the debit side, 180. But you have to understand, there has to be another account that is affected. What is this? Interest. Interest income or interest expense. This is interest income. So we will credit interest on overdue debtors, and interest income is recorded on the credit side. It increases on the credit side. Let us now see how to record in the general ledger. Here is our general journal that we've already prepared, and we want to post it now to the general ledger. In the general ledger, you have your debtor's control, and your debtor's control increases on the debit side, and it decreases on the credit side. So you have your balance on the debtors, which is 200,000. Once we charge interest on a particular debtor, it will increase our debtors. So you find here I have 31, which is the date, general debits, because my interest is on the debit side. There it is. So I'll come and put it on the debit side plus 180. That means my debtor's control has increased because I charged my debtors interest. Now, to complete double entry, I need to record as well in the interest on overdue debtors. Remember, interest income, so it increases on the credit side. So I'll come here and I'll say D debtor is from the GJ, then I have 180. We will now go and do the debtors ledger. We have already prepared our general journal, and we see D debtor, and here is the interest. When we are posting to the debtors ledger, it is important that you remember that the debit side is a plus and the credit side is a minus. So D debtor was already owing 2,400, and we have charged them interest of 180. It will increase what they owe to the business. So you have to say on your calculator 2,400 plus 180 to give you 2,580. When you have understood this, it is very important, dear learners, that you continuously practice on such transactions. With me here, I have the accounting equation, and we want to see the effect of such a transaction on the accounting equation. And it reads, charged the overdue account of debtor of 24,000 with interest of 3% per annum for 3 months. We already know that we had 180. The account to be debited, it is your debtors control. So you would debit your debtors control, which is an asset. So debtors control is an asset. We'll come to the assets, then we say plus. And the account to be credited is interest on overdue debtors. So remember, this is interest income. So it will come to owner's equity plus 180. Any effect on the liabilities? No. My dear learners, now that you've understood the interest on overdue debtors, we are now going to move on to interest on overdue creditors. What is interest on overdue creditors? Interest on overdue creditors is when a business does not pay the creditors on time, then the suppliers, who are the creditors, will charge interest on the business account. Interest is calculated according to a fixed rate within a specific period. When the business pays its debt, the original amount plus the interest must be paid. It is important to remember that we will always try as a business to pay our creditors on time such that we avoid paying interest. Let us record the interest in the general journal. Jack Distributors, a creditor, charged the business overdue account with 10% interest per annum for the 3 months. The business owes 22,000 to Jack Distributors. So we need to calculate the interest. Here is the calculation. We'll take the amount we're owing, which is 22,000, multiply it by the interest, which is 10%, and then we have been owing for 3 months, hence 3 over 12 here. The amount becomes 550. 2 accounts must be involved. The first account is the interest. You have to understand that this is interest we're going to pay, so it becomes interest expense, and interest expense is debited. So you have interest on overdue creditors on the debit side, 550. Expenses are debited. And then we're going to credit now our creditors, who is Jack Distributors. We credit. Once we credit our creditors, which is Jack Distributors, we have to understand that it's going to increase our creditors' control. And you see, on the credit side, 550 is going to be added. Learners, let us quickly move on to the general ledger. Here is our GJ, and we now have our general ledger. Our creditors' control increases on the credit side. Here is a plus. It decreases on the debit side. We were owing 300,000 and we were charged interest. So we now say general credit on the credit side. On the credit side, because we have recorded an amount, as you can see, on the credit side. And the amount is from the GJ 550. We will now come to interest on overdue creditors. This is an expense account. It will increase on the debit side. Then we'll say Jack Distributors 550 on the debit side. We're going to move on now to the creditors ledger. Again, we're posting from our GJ. In the creditors ledger, it is important to know which side does your creditors ledger increase and which side does it decrease. Your creditors ledger increases on the credit side, so you have a plus here, and on the debit side, it's a minus. We were owing to Jack Distributors 10,200 as a creditor, and we have been charged interest of 550. That means I bring it now to the credit side. It's increasing what I owe to Jack Distributors. I'm now going to say 10,200 plus 550. If you take your calculator, it should give you 10,000. not 550, but 10,750. I want you to punch in your calculator again and see. It's 10,200 plus 550 to give you 10,750, because we have added 550, which is interest. Dear learners, we are now going to do the accounting equation. We have a creditor which is charged as interest. Remember, the interest is interest expense, therefore you're going to debit it. So I have debited interest on overdue creditors. And once we have debited interest on overdue creditors, which is an expense, it affects our owner's equity. Hence you see minus 550 on owner's equity. The other account is your creditor's control, which we know is a liability. So we'll credit our creditor's control. Once you credit your creditor's control, which is a liability, you are increasing your liability. You have 550 plus 550. Minus 550 plus 550, the net effect therefore becomes 0. Assets, no effect. It is also 0. Thank you so much for joining me in today's class. I hope to see you again soon. It is goodbye from me, and take care.